All right, today we are diving into one of the most urgent questions of our time, environmental sustainability. We're going to break down the core conflict, get real about the major threats our planet is facing, and then explore the amazing tools we have to build a more balanced future.
At the heart of this entire conversation, it all really boils down to this one central question. Can we, as humans, keep progressing and innovating while also keeping our planet healthy? That's the fundamental tension we really need to get our heads around.
So, let's start right there, with our planet's balancing act. To really get a handle on sustainability, you've got to understand this core conflict first. It's this constant, delicate dance between our growing human needs and the very real limits of our planet.
So what do we actually mean when we say environmental sustainability? Well, it's a lot more than just being green. The real goal is a state where we can get what we need to live well, but without totally draining our natural resources. It's about ensuring a good quality of life for, generations to come.
And here's that conflict in a nutshell. On one side of the rope, you've got rising human demands for more resources, more energy, more space. And on the other side, the absolute, non-negotiable need to conserve the very environment that keeps us alive. It's a constant tug of war.
Okay, so that brings us to the tough part, the environment under threat. Now that we understand that tug of war, let's take a hard look at the key pressures that are really putting our planet at risk.
First up, the greenhouse effect. I'm sure we've all heard the term, but what is it really? Well, think of our atmosphere like a giant invisible blanket wrapped around the Earth. Gases like carbon dioxide, methane, and these things called CFCs, they build up and make that blanket thicker, trapping the sun's heat and stopping it from escaping back into space.
The way it works is actually a pretty simple three-step chain reaction. First, solar energy comes in and warms up the Earth. Simple enough. Then, the planet tries to radiate that heat back out. But, and this is the key part, that layer of greenhouse gases traps a lot of the escaping heat. And it's that trapped energy that causes the slow, steady warming of our entire planet.
And the thing is, the consequences of this warming, they're not some far-off future problem. We are seeing them right now. We see it in rising sea levels from melting ice caps, in the crazy increase of extreme weather, everything from terrible droughts to monster storms, and really tragically, in the loss of so many plants and animals that just can't adapt quickly enough.
And at the exact same time, we're facing another massive threat right here on the ground, deforestation. This is the huge-scale clearing of our forests, whether it's for timber, mining, farming, or just building new towns. We're removing the very ecosystems that act as the lungs of our planet. Now, let's shift our focus to our waterways, because there's this nasty domino effect called eutrophication. It all starts when extra nutrients, usually from things like fertilizer, wash into our rivers and lakes. This causes a massive, and I mean massive, explosion of algae, an algal bloom. This thick green sludge blocks sunlight from getting to the plants below, so they die. Then, as all that dead stuff decomposes, it just sucks all the oxygen out of the water, creating a dead zone where fish and other aquatic life simply can't survive.
So you might be wondering, how do scientists actually check the health of a river or lake? Well, one of the key things they measure is called biochemical oxygen demand, or BOD. Basically, it's a measure of how much oxygen is getting used up by tiny organisms as they break down waste. And the main takeaway is super simple. A high BOD level? That is a huge red flag for high pollution.
Okay, so that was a lot about the problems, and yeah, it's serious. But understanding the threats is only half the story. Now, let's pivot to the solutions. It's time to talk about our high-level strategy: protect, conserve, and restore. Let's break those three down, because they're a little different. Preservation is all about protecting ecosystems and leaving them in their natural state, like a reserve forest that's off-limits. Conservation is more about active management of resources, like what you see in national parks. And then there's restoration, which is all about getting in there and actively repairing the damage, like through massive reforestation projects. Let's just zoom in on conservation for a second. There are two main ways to go about it. In situ literally means on site, so protecting a species right there in its natural home, like in a marine park. The other way is ex situ, which means off-site. This is when we protect species somewhere else, like in a zoo or a botanical garden. So, we have these big, high-level strategies, but the real question is, how do we translate them into things we can actually do? Well, it's time to open up our sustainable toolkit. Now, a lot of us grew up with the 3 R's, right? Reduce, reuse, recycle. But it's time for an upgrade to the 5 R's, and it's a hierarchy. So at the bottom, you have recycle. Before you do that, ask if you can reduce. And before that, can you reuse it or maybe even repair it? But at the very top, the most important one is rethink. Do I even need this in the first place? That mindset is a total game changer for cutting down waste.
And hey, the toolkit doesn't stop there. We have some really clever solutions, like biological control, using natural predators like owls to handle pests instead of nasty chemicals. We've got powerful alternative energy from the sun, wind, and water. And we have simple, effective habits we can all build, like saving rainwater or just choosing greener ways to get around.
A really crucial piece of this whole puzzle is something called food security. And this is about so much more than just having enough food on the planet. It means that all people, at all times, have access to enough safe and nutritious food to live a healthy life. Honestly, it's a cornerstone of any sustainable society. All right, let's shift gears and look forward. Let's explore the horizon and talk about how we're actually building a greener future with new tech and new ways of thinking.
A massive driver of this future is green technology. And we're not just talking about solar panels here, not by a long shot. This is a whole field dedicated to creating products and systems that don't just reduce our negative impact, but actively work to preserve and even restore the natural world.
For green technology to really work, it has to be holistic. You can think of it like a stool with 4 legs. It's built on 4 connected pillars. Of course, it has to address energy and the environment, but it also has to work for the economy, and it has to be good for society. Real, lasting sustainability only happens when all 4 of those are in balance.
But here's the thing, and this is so important. Technology can't solve everything on its own. It's just a tool. The real engine of change is education. Education is what raises awareness, what gives us the knowledge to understand these super complex issues, and ultimately, what gives us the skills to build the solutions we need.
And this brings us right back to the ultimate goal. After everything we've talked about, this is what it all boils down to. Sustainable development means meeting our own needs today, right now, without messing things up for future generations so they can't meet their needs. At its core, it's a promise of fairness to everyone who comes after us.
Look, the challenges are huge, no doubt about it. But as we've seen, the solutions, the ideas, the tools, they already exist. They're right here, in our hands. So the only real question left is a personal one for each of us. Which tool are you going to pick up first? Thanks for joining this explainer.